It is Friday, the 26th of July. Televiewers, thanks for joining us on the last edition of the primetime newscast on Legacy Development Television. On to a major story, Cameroonians have been called upon to refrain from littering their marine environment with plastics and toxic substances. According to environmentalists, the conservation of marine resources can play a significant role in attaining food security and SDGs 1 and 2. Development of this story and more right ahead. Thanks for staying with us, televiewers. As September approaches for the next academic year, non-governmental organizations and the media have redoubled effort in highlighting the importance of education. In this newscast, Honorin Cheng puts together the following report on education.
Going by the United Nations Emergency Fund, UNICEF, sustainable development goals cannot be achieved without education. This is so because 1 year of school is proportionate to a 10% increase in wage earnings. In Cameroon, there are concerns about the close to 3 years of unstable education in some parts of the Northwest and Southwest regions. It is against this backdrop that a back-to-school campaign has been launched by the Center for Human Rights and the Democracy in Africa, CHADA. As visionary, Akbo Bala is of the take that it is best to provide a pen for an African child rather than a gun. Reason why? Burning the guns is an option over incinerating school premises. Also, a couple of newspapers are stunningly involved in the back-to-school campaign, handling it from different angles. The Star newspaper outlines why schools should resume in both regions. As for Logidion newspaper, back-to-school efforts are gaining steam despite continued uncertainties. Professor Gapsa Wilfred, in an exclusive interview with the Sun newspaper, says, and I quote, "Preventing children from going to school is recycling illiteracy and the poverty in the Northwest and Southwest. Facts from the United Nations Secretary General's Global Initiative on Education show that 57 million kids in developing countries remain out of school, while 60% of those who lack basic literacy are women. While the government is thus encouraged to remedy the chaotic situation by bringing peace to emergency areas of the two English-speaking regions, the media on its part is leaving no stone unturned. Going by the recent outing of the Median newspaper, over 600,000 children are out of school in the Northwest and Southwest, which may affect the future generation."
Honorin Cheng in that report. The effects of depleting wildlife has come to a fall in this newscast, with the population encouraged to be abreast with the Cameroon forestry and wildlife laws, as ignorance before the law is no excuse. Our communication volunteer Sylvanus Aqua went investigating on the penalty of illegal hunting and put together the following report.
Wildlife sustainability in Cameroon is increasingly a matter of concern due to adverse human actions, including deforestation, pollution, and hunting, which have left most plant and animal species endangered. In order to prevent the risk of having this unique flora and fauna extinct, the government has categorized animals into Class A, B, and C. According to conservationists, Class A animals such as elephants, pangolins must not be hunted for any reason. Meanwhile, animals under Class B can be hunted if authorized. They equally add that Class C animals can be hunted for subsistence purposes and with the use of traditional tools. To put order in the sector, Section 101 of the 1996 Cameroon Forestry Law stipulates that anyone caught in possession of a Class A live or dead animal is considered to have killed it. Meanwhile, Section 108 of the same law states that anyone who infringes the law is liable to a fine of 3 to 10 million or serve a jail term of 3 to 10 years. Considering, therefore, the significant role plant and animal species play in balancing the ecosystem, their sustainable conservation for posterity is very vital. The public is therefore called upon to collectively join efforts in the conservation of biodiversity, for nature is life.
Communication volunteer Sylvanus Aqua ending that report. On to other news, Cameroonians have been called upon to refrain from littering their marine environment with plastics and toxic substances. According to environmentalists, the conservation of marine resources can play a significant role in attaining food security and SDGs 1 and 2. Details in the following report. According to environmentalists, Cameroon marine ecosystem is facing a handful of threats, with the most challenging being the problem of plastics. However, a resolution of the 22nd African Integrated Marine Strategy calls for total conservation and protection of African seas and oceans. This has been applauded by many who hold that marine resources are a catalyst for climate change adaptation.
The marine environment has a lot of resources. The marine resources here, we're talking about marine wildlife, plants, and the animals found in the seas and in the oceans. And these resources, of course, generate income to man. Of course, is a source of food to man. So there is food security ascertained as far as enjoying these resources are concerned. And there's some level of nutritional security involved in protecting the marine resources.
Meantime, they have noted that individuals should refrain from unfriendly environmental practices commonly exhibited by the population.
Marine wildlife is facing a lot of challenges from human-induced activities. One of these activities is the deposition of single-use plastics within the environment. With single-use plastics, I'm talking about plastics which are less than 61 microns. So when people tend to consume their goods with single-use plastics, the end point is that they will tend to dump these light plastics in the environment. And when the rain falls, it carries these plastics with the runoff into the seas and oceans. And the end point is that the marine wildlife, they mistake it for food. And when they consume these plastics, it tends to negatively obstruct the digestive systems of this marine wildlife.
To remedy the situation to them, there is a need for a periodic cleanup campaign around marine environment, plus the implementation of strong and sustainable monitoring mechanisms.
During the 2000 United Nations Summit, it was discussed that there was need for the 2030 agenda to be enacted. And one of these outcomes was that there is the Sustainable Development Goal number 1 and Sustainable Development Goal number 2, which is on zero hunger and to end poverty. And for zero hunger, there is need for food security to be achieved. And for food security to be achieved, it implies that we need to protect our marine environment, because a lot of food comes from our marine environment, because a lot of people are engaged in fishing. That's to tell you the economic importance that the marine environment has to man. And so for us to attain food security, we need to protect our marine environment, because a lot of these fish is being obtained from the marine environments. The government should put in place monitoring mechanisms that can go a long way to monitor the illegal exploitation of marine resources. With this put in place, I think man is going to enjoy the beauty that God gave us through the marine ecosystem.
Cameroonians are therefore called upon to jealously conserve and protect their marine resources, since these will contribute to attaining food security and SDGs 1 and 2 of no poverty and zero hunger. That is the end of the 8 p.m. primetime newscast on Legacy Development TV for this day. televiewers, we leave you with a recap of our major story. Cameroonians have been called upon to refrain from littering their marine environment with plastics and toxic substances. According to environmentalists, the conservation of marine resources can greatly contribute to the attaining food security and SDGs 1 and 2. Thanks for staying with us, and we now leave you in the company of quality music and educative programs on Legacy Development Television. Do have a blissful weekend.